All right, here we are, and we are live with the Class Consciousness Project comrades, and we have with us today, we have Jason down south, Rick up north, me kind of off north, but almost in the Midlands. Jason, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, Alex. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. Rick, how you doing?
Plodding on, my mate, plodding on.
And we got also with us Chris, if you're back yet.
Hello, I am back yet. Am I a
Excellent, mate.
clanger?
No, you're a circle with a mysterious figure in the middle of it.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm here anyway.
Excellent. So we have a number of issues under discussion today based on articles we've had recently on the Class Consciousness Project website, which I'd urge everybody to go and check out. And also we might have, if we've got time, we might have to throw in some other discussions as well. The aim of this is also to familiarise those watching with the various different pieces of work that we've done. So far we have in the chat, we have James Graham and Paul McCord. Good evening to both of you, comrades. And first up tonight, many of you may be aware of the oeuvre of Mr. Ben Shapiro, a long-term performance piece by a very good actor from the United States. But seriously, he did a video recently on pensions, which I think I'll leave it up to Jason, who's the writer of our article in response to this, to talk about it. But I think the way that Jason addressed it in the article actually goes to a more accurate analysis than the typical left response that Shapiro gets, which is to say, "Oh my God, look at him! Isn't he awful?" You know, which he is in many respects, but. Jason, why don't I throw over to you, and you want to talk about like the video that Shapiro did and why you took the angle that you did on exploring the issue?
Yeah, sure. So on the 12th of March, Ben Shapiro, who does a Monday to Friday podcast every day in the week, to bring it into context, he was talking about the profligacy, in his view, of the Joe Biden administration, which has spent money like there's no tomorrow on all kinds of things, including the Inflation Reduction Bill, amongst other things. And I think the gist of what he was saying was that eventually the country is going to run out of money. And one of the things he then went on to touch upon was retirement age in the United States and the state pension, what they call the Social Security pension in the United States. And he said it was insane that the retirement age was still 65. He was wrong. It isn't. It's 66 years and 2 months, which is later on going up to 67. But he also said that it was a stupid idea to retire full stop unless you had some sort of health problem. And most people, I would say, who are 65 and over are likely to have some sort of health problem. It doesn't necessarily stop them from working. But to say that you shouldn't retire at 65 unless you have some sort of health problem wouldn't leave a very large pool of people behind. But one of the things he did point or hit upon during his monologue was the notion that capitalist countries should be obliged to provide a social security backed living pension for people who retire at 65. And one of the things that British readers of the article that I wrote, and obviously British people who watched Ben Shapiro's podcast, would have thought is, well, the state pension in the United Kingdom doesn't give you a living pension. You cannot live on what is roughly £880 a month, not with the rampant inflation we've had in this country, the profiteering on the part of the electricity and gas companies, which is leaving us with bills that are in treble figures every month now for most people. The rampant food inflation that we've seen over the last 18 months. And the article that I wrote focuses on those things. It's that the state pension that this country provides does not compare favorably to the United States. It's something like in the region of about $500 a month difference, approximately. But it's it's choice now that's being made by governments across Europe and the United States and elsewhere, that the governments are no longer willing to back state pensions anymore. They're not willing to pay for them. We saw recently the riots in France because Emmanuel Macron wanted to end, or at least, no, he wanted to raise the state pension age from 62 to 64, which caused strikes. 1 million people were marching in the streets, riots, breaking out all over the place over these changes that he was making to the state pension under the guise of they're not affordable anymore. And the long and the short of it is that state pensions are still affordable. Of course, it's the state doesn't want to pay for them anymore. So that was really what my article was driving at. And as I said, anyone who draws a state pension in this country has to supplement it with either a employment pension, something that they got from their previous job or jobs, or some other vehicle. And it was something that Rick and I were talking about earlier on. It's the collapse in private pension provision that has led, in a way, to the overheating in the housing market, because people are buying second and third houses to provide them with an income, and then subsequently to sell them to provide them with a pension pot when they retire.
So basically, because the state pension is something that can't be lived on, it's actually fueling more rampant speculation in other areas of the economy as people desperately try to supplement their income. And because of the way the heavily financialized way that American and British capitalism actually is now, the capitalist class actually welcomes this, because either A, they get a cheap, exploitable workforce who have to go back to work in their 60s or even into the 70s, or B, for those who are slightly better off and have money or the ability to borrow to invest, it's fueling property bubbles and other investment booms, shall we say, short-term booms in other areas of the economy.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, as we've discussed before, governments will always liberate, shall we say, the workforce. For instance, abolishing the retirement age by claiming it's a liberal measure. It's allowing people to work later in their lives. But the fact of the matter is, it just creates another layer of hyper exploitable labour. It's just another group of people that will be exploited, only this time for longer. And of course, the rules as they stood only a few years ago were that when the compulsory retirement age was 65, you had to make a very good case to your employer to be able to work on beyond 65, because the argument was, if you sit there blocking a job, then a younger person ends up out of work. And so it's always better for you to move on into retirement and for that younger person to fill the gap. But of course, with the removal of those laws under the guise of its age discrimination, it actually acts to the detriment of younger people.
Yeah. Which is another useful thing for the capitalist class, because then it's a matter of playing up the clash of generations, playing up the younger workers against the old, etc., which I noticed they really started to do after the 2008 crash, was play up the idea that it was the boomers, so to speak, who were all universally wealthy, who were hogging all the money, and they were the reason why the young couldn't get on the property ladder, etc., etc. So every single development that happens under capitalism is another means for the ruling class to try and split one element of the working class against the other, essentially, in all of these cases.
Yeah.
Rick, did you have anything to chime in on this particular issue?
Yeah. I think it's obviously it's a very lucky person who believes that they can continue working past the 60+ mark. As you say, so many people do get ailments come into the 60s. I think the vast majority of people our age have probably worked since they were 16. I know from the push for everyone to go to university, there was a lot more people that spent a few more years in education and a few service jobs. So it's a very long time to be in work. And now if you're in a manual labour job, you will be inundated with injuries, as I am. And by the time you get to 60, you're struggling to continue. I remember working on a building site, and there was a little old Irishman, and he was about 67. And he's a brickie, and he used to come in to keep himself busy, he said, to get this little bit of money. And you can see every movement that he made was a struggle, and the work that he did wasn't capable to keep up with the need of what we were doing. So it's not feasible to keep people in the roles that they probably worked in all their life. So they'd have to retrain if the ability, if the facility is there, or they'd have to find themselves in some kind of service job, which is lower paid to what they previously were. Or I find a lot, especially in the city, a lot of pre-retirement people, mainly men, go onto the taxis, and then you've got to really get after get your money then as well, and deal with in the twilight of years. You got to deal with fools who want to come home after the night out. It's just shows that a privileged lifestyle that Shapiro has had. As you mentioned, what was his one parent?
His father was a composer, and his mother was a television executive.
Not like one was a bin man and one was a publican. Do you know what I mean?
I believe he went to Harvard.
There's another thing that's missing as well, is the fact that at one point, those industries you might work in all your life, and then you get paid off when you leave. Now, how few and far between they are in Britain right now. I remember I worked on the docks, and there was a gentleman that ended up leaving. By the time he left, he was in a job that was able to facilitate an older gentleman instead of working on the tools, and he left with a lump sum. Now, that is unheard of anymore. It's extremely unheard of. People bounce around jobs, and most jobs won't pay out now, like you say, with the law that's passed. So it's incredible. And then when you come to the state pension, you need to subsidise it with something. Yeah, and you need to subsidise it with something, whether it's going to be another wage, whether it's going to be using the rent of another property, or whether it's just continue on until you fall. And this is why when he says that's why people are dying 3 years later, is because they work so hard. You're putting into society. This is the thing that the bourgeois, well, they probably do understand, but they don't care. We're putting into society. You are working hard to create the country, keep the country working. So at the twilight years of your life, you should be able to sit down and rest and enjoy what time you have left, not be scratching around down the corner of the couch to try and find an extra 50p for the gas meter.
Chris, did you want to come in?
Well, I'm not going to contradict anything you have said, because you all were spot on. When we've got like the benefits of modern society, as in people living longer, that doesn't mean you should have to work longer. It should mean you have longer to enjoy your retirement. And the current society we have throws a few obstacles in the way. What's already been mentioned is the fact that retired people still need money when they should just be catered for. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but provided for. But as well, a lot of retired people feel isolated because they're not in a workforce anymore, and they could end up just living in a block of flats where they don't know the neighbours. They can't go to the pub. There's nothing for them to do, so they go back to work for that reason as well. And that shouldn't be the case. Retirement should be enjoyable. You've spent 50 odd years working. The next 20 years of your life should be pure enjoyment.
Yeah, that's certainly the case. I mean, just to throw in a couple of examples from socialist countries, like the way they used to organize a lot of social welfare stuff in the old USSR wasn't that it was all done through the state as such. It was done through the bit of the economic sector or the workplace that you were in. So if you were, say, for instance, a miner in the USSR, you got to retire, I believe, before the age of 55. That was actually compulsory. You had to stop working because, as other comrades have been indicated, you wouldn't be able to do it. You wouldn't be able to work underground in cramped conditions, burrowing for coal into your late 50s. So they got to retire in their early 50s at the latest. and if they'd spent like their life working there, the town they lived in, or the mining community they lived in, had its own hospital, social club, like library, pubs, other social establishments that they could go to, and retired people could then enjoy. And the workplace therefore wasn't just the centre of people's working lives. It provided all the services for people that they then used when they retired. And because, of course, the cost of living, so for instance, accommodation costs and bills and utility bills in the USSR didn't go beyond, I think, for most of the USSR's existence, 5% of your income. So you could actually retire on much less and live decently because so much was provided due to the sheer productivity of the economy and the fact that all these facilities were attached to your old workplace. So you could stay in the town you'd grown up in or the town you'd worked most of your life in, and you could then retire with the cohort that you went into the place with. You could then hang out with them at various different locations. There was all kinds of cultural stuff available to people. What's available to you in terms of cultural life if you retire now in Britain? You can't. Cinema's overpriced. Like, good luck going to a live musical event because that's going to cost you 30 odd quid. Or like at best you'll get like a tenner ticket maybe on like some day event. Going to any public space now is increasingly difficult because most of the public space has been privatized or closed down. So like, where is it that people are supposed to go? Not just retired people, but like families as well. So like, and of course, as Jason indicated, the cost of living has reached the point where it's like comfortable retirement isn't an option. So comfortable retirement isn't an option. Staying on at work and working yourself into an earlier grave than would be usually the case is an option, but not much of one. So like, people are caught in an unaffordable set of scenarios here, an undesirable set of scenarios that the ruling class has quite deliberately constructed. And nobody is going to address this. We're in an election year in Britain, and I'm aware we might have viewers overseas, where everybody will lie about two pensioners to get the votes of pensioners. But throw it back to Jason again. Is the thoroughly decent man known as Sir Keir Starmer going to save the British pension system? Some people seem to believe that he does.
Well, spoiler alert, everyone. No, he won't. No.
Oh, fucking hell.
Yeah, sorry. I gave that away. Sorry, Chris. I spoke the phone for you. No. The system in this country is too sclerotic. It's too brittle. It cannot be moulded back into benefiting the working class, or indeed anybody except for the ruling class. And there's no possibility in my mind of any sort of boost to the state pension for anyone retiring in the next 5-10 years, whatever it's going to be. I mean, let's call it what it is. One of the things that Ben Shapiro touched upon in his monologue was that his parents were still working. As I said, his mother was a television executive and his dad is a composer. They're not exactly hard graft. It's not going down a coal mine. That's not working in a steel mill. You know, those are very, very white collar, comfortable professions. So, yeah, I could understand. I mean, you could argue, when does a composer ever retire? You sort of compose until you die, basically, don't you? So,
composers, sorry, I was just going to say composers should really work until they stop making good music.
Yeah.
Like Elton John is a good example.
Yeah, absolutely.
He should have retired years ago.
Quite right. And
or Sting, who should never have started.
No, that's true. But the point I'm making is that for a lot of working class people, retirement is the opportunity to do all the things they wanted to do. You know, the opportunity to look after their grandchildren or spend more time with their grandchildren, maybe even educate themselves a bit more, read a bit more, go to places they couldn't do when they worked. And working till you're dead never gives you that chance. You know, the idea that all work in and of itself is rewarding in a capitalist system is completely folly. It's completely wrong. Most jobs are drudgery. They're boring. They're monotonous. They're poorly paid. They're often poorly managed. You have to fight with poor HR departments and all kinds of other things. Most jobs are quite miserable when you think about it. So having at least a few years at the end to do exactly what you want to do, as long as your health allows, has to be a good thing. And it can't be a regressive thing to want to retire, as Ben Shapiro believes.
Exactly right. And we'll pause now just to say hello to more people who've come in. We have 43 watching, and that's 22 on Twitter or X and 20 on YouTube. So that's doing pretty well. Be sure to like and share the stream if you haven't done so already. So Paul McCord says he's chosen us over Moats. I salute the sacrifice there, comrade.
Yep. I salute you as well, even though you can't see me.
And we got Jerry who says, I usually watch Moats, but prefer to watch later at 1.5 times the speed. Some of the guests are good, but I like to whiz through Galloway quickly. Ian Foster, good evening to you, comrade, who joins us from the Great English Northwest. We've got Abtin Kamoshi joining us. Will Johnson is here. Jack, howdy back to you. All right, we've got a comment here from Colchester Ian, who says, workers in industry tend to come into contact with dangerous materials and chemicals, resulting in shorter life or illnesses in later life. I work with lead cables and have health issues associated with it. So, I mean, Jason, Rick, Chris, this is exactly the point that you've all been making, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, further comment on the USSR from Jerry, who says, I used to know a chap who was an officer with the National Union of Journalists. He visited the USSR in the early 1980s and was impressed at how everyone was looked after from cradle to grave. Yes, exactly. Nobody there got left behind, and they had full employment until what happened? Gorbachev introduced capitalist methods, and the collapse therein occurred, quite deliberately so. James Graham says, Fred the Shred Goodwin of RBS retired at 50 on 30 million. I wonder if he's made it last, James.
Yeah,
you know?
I wonder if he's eked it out. I mean, that's it exactly, isn't it? The very people who tell you that state pensions are unaffordable, when they leave the work life, they go away with an absolute skip load of money to spend on whatever it is they like to spend it on.
How many million was that? Because
30.
30.
That could be a big part of the pension pot, really, for those who don't want to carry on their lives flipping work until drudgery, do they? Do you know what I mean? 30 million.
Well,
let's not forget what Fred the Shred actually did. He tanked RBS by buying ABN AMRO in Holland for way more than it was worth. And then they got caught out in the credit crisis, and RBS had to be nationalised. And for that, he's
actually a shite businessman.
A terrible one, yeah.
So much for high risk, high reward. Gamble, lose, get rewarded anyway. That's the wonderful world of British capitalism. Ben Kavanagh is with us and says, good time to mention that the retirement age in the DPRK is 60 for men and 55 for women. Also, elder workers can have a big impact on grandchildren. I think that's underestimated.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, Ben. Yeah, 100%.
Can I just say, sorry,
Chris?
I didn't mean to interrupt, Dave. I'll wait till you finished.
Oh, no, go ahead if you wanted to come in on a specific point.
Well, it was just about more elderly workers. I've heard a few people say this, that, bringing retirees back to the workforce, they can educate younger workers. And what I think about that is that should be happening throughout the entire process of your working life. You learn more skills and then pass them on to the people next. You don't get to retirement and then be asked to come back into work 20 years later because the people who are doing your job don't know how to do it properly. I just think that it exposes a complete flaw in the system that we have now. There's no continuity.
Yeah. No. And if everybody's changed jobs 10 times by the age of 50, where's the established workforce to pass on the knowledge? It's already
exactly
gone.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or if you have an example like the workforce I'm in, where people tend to stay for a long time. I've been there 35 years this year, and there's other people who've been there longer. But unfortunately, what has happened in the past is that rather than encourage the more senior people to pass on their skills and experience, they get to a point where they're all fed up. They want to cut staff, offer severance, and in one foul swoop, 9, 10, whatever it is, people leave all at once and take with them the better part of 500 years experience.
Mm.
Yeah.
Uh,
Whole
that,
generation.
that, yeah, we. I'm not saying that doesn't or even shouldn't happen. I'm saying there shouldn't be a system where that's required to happen in order for people to have happiness.
Yeah, and also, if employers were serious about consistent training, they'd not only make an effort to retain the knowledge that people who are coming close to retirement have gathered, so it could be put into future training manuals. I mean, in the civil service where I used to work, they used to talk constantly about knowledge retention. So they would give people who are going to retirement exit interviews to make sure you've gathered your knowledge. But of course, you can't gather all the knowledge somebody's got about a job from a 1 hour interview on their way out the door when they're thinking about their retirement due. You should be constantly updating training manuals and systems based on people's experience and knowledge of it. But that isn't what most workplaces do. It's certainly not in the public sector. What they do is if they want to rewrite a training manual, they contract it out to an external consultant who doesn't know the place, who'll make something up that then has to be endlessly adapted or ignored. So like the employers don't take training and development seriously because to take it seriously means investment and it means consistent work for a team in that workplace, which they don't want to invest in, essentially.
I know, because we've gone in Britain. Sorry to overseas listeners. We went from building Stonehenge, which was a technological marvel, to building Lincoln Cathedral, which for a time was the tallest building in the world, to building houses what you can punch through, what a toddler can punch through.
Yeah.
So there's been quite a decline in our country of engineering skills and architecture skills and building skills.
Indeed, there has, and we could do an hour just on housing, really, couldn't we? And maybe that's something for us to look at in the future. I'll go through the rest of the chat now. We have Luca, who's enjoying the interesting discussion. Wolf Tone himself has joined us, which I think is quite an interesting development. Comment from Paul McCord, who says, tobacco and alcohol are the best tools ever by government to get the most out of you and give the least back. Excessive taxation and earlier death, less pension payout. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I would say, and I've made this argument before, the NHS's model, when it was founded, was that people, 2/3 of adults smoked. So you paid more tax and you died sooner. And as smoking has become less and less popular, I think it's less than a fifth of the population smoke now. It's presented the NHS with a problem because these people aren't paying as much tax. Well, they are through income tax and other things, perhaps, but they're not paying as much tax on items that they choose to use, and they're living for longer. As Ben Shapiro said in his monologue, the average age is over 80, life expectancy in America. What he forgot, though, was that life expectancy started to come back down again. It's coming down in this country, and it's coming down in the United States as well.
Yeah, capitalism has a way of making you die sooner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do agree with Paul. Through. Sorry,
Chris, go ahead.
I was going to say I do agree with Paul's point, but I also smoke and drink quite a lot, which kind of backs up his point. I'll be dead in the next 5 years.
God, bloody hell, Chris.
Well, as long as it's not in the next 30 minutes, we'll be okay.
We don't know.
We don't want a Tommy Cooper incident here. Right. Jonathan Collins comments, another thing is a lot of people in workplaces don't live anywhere near each other. So there's a good point in there about how there's no sense of community anymore in the workplace. Everything is very anonymous. I mean, that's true. Every place I've worked in has been 5, 6, 7, 8 miles or longer away from where I actually live. And people come in, and that was like a shorter commute in the last place because like people were coming, last office I worked in, because people were doing 50-mile round trips to get into work. So there is no sense of community at all anymore in many places.
No, that's
it's funny you say that. Me and Jason were speaking about that as well today. The area in which I live, was built up around the railway coming from the docks of Liverpool, and a lot of the slate coming from Wales and other resources that was worked around the railway. So the houses were built up not from the dockland, but from the railway that produced from the dockland, essentially. And then not only with that, other industries popped up now in the little circular estate in which I live. It's very, very little money has been put in it, so you do see bits of the past. There is an old dairy right in the middle. I don't know what it does now. It's all blocked off. It looks looked after, but I don't think it still has anything to do with milk. But everybody in the region, if they didn't work in the railway, they worked on this dairy, or obviously in the pubs or the shops that came up later on. So the facility to work was on your doorstep for everyone. These are once again going back to the industries that would probably work you for a length of time and then pay you off, and you were living within the community that looked after you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rick, were we not talking about that ourselves, about the Liverpool cow sheds?
Yeah, we were, mate. Yeah.
Yeah. They used to have them amongst the huge terraces, the terraced estates of the 1800s up until the 50s. And you can go get your eggs or your milk from literally the end of your street. You didn't have to get them from a shop even. There were actually cows and chickens on housing estates in small urban farms.
Well, this gets us perilously close to another hot button issue at the moment, which is the issue of the 15-minute city. Now, I know that we didn't have that on the slate for tonight, comrades, but I think this is an example of something which sounds good getting perverted by capitalism. Because in theory, it should be the case that wherever you're living, you should be able to access quite a lot of services or things that you need and your family needs within 15 minutes of your doorstep walking. That should be something to actually aim towards.
Well, yeah, of course.
British capitalism is turning it into is a nightmarish scheme whereby the middle class basically walls off the working class and then says you can't leave your estate, basically.
Yeah.
So in theory, it's a really good idea to have you should be able to access medical services, access your shops, access things you need within at least 15 minutes or so walking. That should be something we actually aim for. But this current system can't do that because it's everything it does is filtered through a state system which is rigged to essentially always wage a class war upon the working class.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
and sorry, Chris. It wasn't that long ago that we used to build communities from scratch that were like that. These 15-minute communities. What I mean is the council estates like Dagenham, near where I grew up, and Harold Hill as well, even closer to where I grew up, where the designers would build obviously a brand new council housing estate, but then provide police stations, churches, parades of shops, pubs, community centres, parks, everything. So you didn't have to leave the new estate. Everything was there. And then over the years, capitalism has seen to it that the police station has been pulled down and they've built a little on top of it. And, you know, the ability to get hold of local amenities goes because parades of shops are being hollowed out because shops are closing down all the time. And then before you know it, you're having to get on a bus and travel half an hour, 45 minutes to a bigger town with those amenities that you used to have. So we did used to do it. It was only 70 years ago, but we've stopped doing it now. And like you say, it's capitalism's habit of destroying everything.
Taking away from the high street. Well, now you've got those retail estates where they throw everything. You got supermarkets, everything. So everything's either accessible by car or you're going and spending more in your very small local shops.
Yeah. Because I was going to say that these out of town retail parks and your big supermarkets, they're doing that job anyway. They're focusing people to go, usually by car, because the public transport is so shit, to these out of town areas where they can get everything. And where I live, in a planned economy, it could quite easily be a 15-minute city all we need is like 2 extra bus routes and extra doctors, and a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker. Not to be facetious, but things that people need. Because the buildings, the units are already there, but all they are bookies and hairdressers and takeaways. And I was just today. I was at the rally, with the St. John's Market people who've been locked out, and I was saying to them, it's the supermarkets and its capitalist culture what is destroying a local market and a local trader and just localism in general. And even with, obviously, we get more people, they need places to live, but places to live to a capitalist is just a house, a poorly built house. But to me, and hopefully to all of you who are listening, a place to live it's more than just a house. It's parks, it's shops, it's a community, it's activities, it's relationships, it's a church or a mosque or whatever, or a pub, somewhere where you can go and congregate and talk to people. It isn't just a dwelling. It's not just a box.
A little box
to put you in when you finish working.
Yeah, well, a box is all you get in due to Manchester's amazing regeneration now. A box where if you lean on the wall too hard, it wobbles and your hand comes away covered in paint because it's been painted with such shite quality. If you put your hand on it, it rubs off.
Yeah, I don't know how to put pictures up on this, but I seen quite a funny meme the other day. I sent it to Rick. It said new houses, and there was a picture of a plasterboard wall with a hole punched through it, and underneath it said, "Please don't hurt me." And next to it said old houses. It was an artexed wall saying, "Punch me again and I'll break your other arm."
History through memes. That's a case in point.
I don't usually like memes, but that was a decent one.
Some of them are good. We've got more comments coming in here, comrades. Jonathan Collins says, classic case in point is the contractor system we've got. Councils use contractors from opposite ends of the country to do work that local people should be doing. I mean, that's a very good point.
Yep.
Every place I've worked in again, public sector, is there's a revolving door of contractors, often older people in 50s or early 60s who got out when the going was good, set themselves up as independent IT or finance contractors and come back in on a day rate of hundreds of pounds or if the senior management level, thousands of pounds. I knew one guy, well, I didn't know him, but I worked for him. He was on £2,000 a day rate. Now I know, of course, you have to work out your own taxes out of that, so he's not going out with all of that. But that's a gigantic whack for basically sitting there and pretending to run a project where in actual fact what he did was he sat there, chaired a meeting and says, "Oh yes, really, what do you think? Oh, what do you think? Well, I think that's all very good. I'm glad we could work together on this." But because he had a big reputation, he came in and basically took a job that somebody else should have been developed into over years, and then fucked off out of it again when everything when the shit all hit the fan. Got loads of comments coming in on this, comrades. It seems to have struck a nerve. 53 of you watching on YouTube and on X or Twitter, 35 on X and 19 now on YouTube. We have Marius, who joins us from the United States of America and says, 15-minute cities would be marvellous under socialism, but under capitalism, they'll just be another version of gated communities.
Yeah, which is exactly what they are. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why those Oxford middle-class people want it.
Yes, exactly.
Tom asks the question of the day, ban supermarket club cards. What does the Class Consciousness Project think about that? Anybody got any thoughts?
On the spot there.
Club cards? Well, to be honest, I'd limit supermarkets to certain things. If you really wanted to go down a route of trying to create more viable places to shop. I don't know, what would the banning club cards do? Just to
I have no idea.
Back? Is that what it's for?
Well, my opinion on that is that the club cards, like loyalty cards, I don't have one. I don't think anyone should have loyalty to a place where they buy things that they need. You go in there because you need food.
I think the point of but why people use them is not the loyalty to the shop itself, but they're being paid for continuously going back because they get discounted. Which you will take if you get discount or anything for free. People will take that if you're going to go there anyways. It's worth taking. But for me, the supermarket should be limited in what they can do instead of being the multi-conglomerate that takes business away from everything else and then drives it down to the bare minimum of what they need to sell. So if you have a butcher, the meat from a butcher is 10 times better than the shelf in Asda or any other supermarket. Then fishmongers, where the fishmongers gone? They're on our shelf. They're on a 3-story shelf with just salmon.
No, exactly. The food that we I mean we as the people of Britain, as the workers of Britain make, should all be quality, and it should all be affordable, and that's why I don't agree with these loyalty cards, because they're exploiting, well, like capitalism always does, they're exploiting people's need for food. And if the food was just cheap anyway, and if land was managed properly and the seas were managed properly, we'd all have affordable quality meat and fish and vegetables.
Well, the only reason why we don't is because this is all in private hands. Jason, you wanted to come back on something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that all right, I'm not necessarily well read in how capitalism works. I've got a rough idea. The club card is probably the single biggest market research tool, most successful market research tool ever devised. It tells Tesco's what you buy, when you buy it, how much you buy it, and most importantly, they can track that data back to individual people. So they can work out the buying habits, not only of you, but everyone that lives nearby that supermarket. It helps them in terms of stock taking. It helps them in terms of stock ordering. It helps them in terms of what they get in and what they don't get in. More importantly, you go to 2 different Tesco's in 2 different parts. I mean, I live in North Essex, but I work in London. And the stuff you can get in London Tesco's is remarkably different to what you can get in an Essex one. And that's because of the club card. And they know the demographic. So what you get in terms of those nice little discounts, the little crumbs from the table that Tesco's prepared to let you have, because they have made an absolute mint out of that that club card, not only in terms of stocking shops that suit the number of people and the kinds of people that use them, but they've saved themselves a fortune in waste, in putting things on shelves that won't sell. And their turnover now, I think the last time I checked, their turnover is £53 billion a year. And a lot of that is down to them pioneering the club card.
Yeah. Well, to add to that, I never thought about it that way, Jason. If we had a planned economy and we had that system, that would be fantastic, because there'd be so little waste.
Yeah, exactly.
And but if it's only done for a shady company like Tesco's to make profit, it's a bad thing. But to do that under a planned economy for the benefit of the people of Britain, that would be a brilliant thing.
Yeah.
So you'd know that, like, you know, people in Essex don't like Stilton cheese, so we're not going to distribute it there, for example. I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, I don't.
But everyone in Leicester likes it, so there's going to be loads of Stilton cheese there. But I think what we've been talking about the entire night, and what we always talk about, is everything is shit under capitalism. And it is boss under a planned economy.
Well, I think the point is that not only is everything getting shitter, I mean, to draw on Jason's comment about 70 years ago, you used to be able to build a community that actually functioned as a community. And you don't do that now. You build something in the sky filled with poorly made boxes that vibrate when the wind goes through them, basically. But the point is, and this drawing from the club card discussion, the potential is there to actually make the entire country far, far better. The reason why it's not is because of a tiny minority of capitalist parasites who dominate and misuse all the technology to just essentially guard the profits for themselves. So all the potential that's there in this country can be realised, and all the wasted potential amongst the working class who are condemned to work shit jobs they don't like, who don't get the opportunity to express their innovative sides, because let's face it, everybody gets asked at work, hey, the manager wants to hear your ideas and how to make the job better. Who actually honestly answers that question? Because usually what he's looking for is, how can you come up with ideas for me to put you out of a job? And who wants to be creative for that? Think of how much creativity there would actually be under a system whereby you knew you could actually contribute to a discussion about the future of your workplace or your industry, and you had the security knowing that even if you were essentially talking yourself or planning yourself out of a job, there would be another one for you to be retrained and go into with no loss of pay. How much more creative would the average worker be then?
Well, that's why they pushed through the socialising of the workforce in the Soviet Union before they went into the 5-year plan. They wanted to socialise the workforce. They wanted the workforce to understand that this was their workforce, that they were pushing to create the country before they attempted this big undertaking, because otherwise it never would have worked. And when they did, then they realised the untapped potential of the proletariat, didn't they? And they finished the 5-year plan in 4.
Yeah, exactly right, Rick. No, so the club card question triggered a discussion, which maybe, I don't know if the questioner had that in mind, but it certainly took us in some interesting directions. Yeah. Paul McCord comments, and we now have 64 people watching live, so this is pretty good stuff. Be sure to like and share the stream if you haven't done so already. Paul McCord comments, years ago, most people used to work in the local factory, mill, pit, farm or ancillary work within reasonable walking, cycling or short public transport distances. Roads were quiet. Now most people commute. Now the roads are clogged. The public transport system groans under the weight of the number of people on it. And, well, good luck getting to work on time unless you leave an hour, at least. Even to get into the city centre of Manchester takes like an hour on the bus at like 8 in the morning because, of course, the road's clogged. Or it takes a 45-minute journey on the train because of the train's backed up outside of Piccadilly Station in the rush hour waiting to get a platform free. Or try and find a parking space. You know, if you're driving, try and find a decent parking space in the centre of any city that doesn't cost you a bomb. So you get ripped off just going to work.
yeah, exactly. My toughest commute was when I worked in Earl's Court in West London. From where I live in North Essex, it was a 2-hour journey each way.
But even when it was close for me, when going to work on the docks, when I had to when I had to work in Travis Perkins, not too far, but the time frames and when you travel. So the worst time to travel is when the people are taking kids to school. Yeah. Especially in the direction of which I'm going, where there's several different schools across Queen's Drive. You get on the bus, you can't move, the school kids kicking off, and the conductor's the driver who's not going to come in the back and sort them out. And then you've got 100 different mums driving 100 different cars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are so many solutions to that, apart from just like shooting a load of people.
Well,
hang on.
Well, I think that we've agreed before, Chris. We've just got to shoot the right people.
Yeah. But building more schools. Why? Again, like I said before, private companies employ people to build houses and houses and houses. But if you're building a new housing estate, there should be a school.
Yeah.
There should be a shopping arcade. You can't just build houses all the time. That's the only thing that seems to be built. Even when
it's profitable.
Yeah, but do you know what? It fucking frustrates me because do you know what? I've run out of things to say on this.
Well, I'll go on to the next comment then.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
All right. Robert Hand comments, many US workers get laid off, in inverted commas, when they turn 50 to be replaced by younger workers who can then be paid much less. But then the workers who are laid off can't find a job, so end up going to Uber or Walmart, ensuring that they can never, ever retire. So, I mean, that's exactly what we were mentioning earlier on, comrades, wasn't it? Abtin Kamoshi comments, very true. A place to live is a community, a meaningful place, not a cell to be bartered back and forth. Yeah, exactly the point we were making.
Yeah.
Paul McCord comments with the question on club cards, says, I play them at their own game, picking up receipts off the floor, cashing the points, and they haven't got a clue what I buy. The man planning ahead right there.
You pick up receipts from other supermarkets. You're driving from Devon to flipping Scotland with different receipts.
Hey, if there's a scam to be had there, we should all get in on it. Colchester Ian says, average life expectancy is misleading. Could have small percentage of the upper class living much longer, a large percentage the working class dying a little earlier, and depending upon numbers could show average life expectancy going up. Yeah, that's a fair point. The average doesn't actually give you the best indication.
That's correct.
If you look at the median life expectancy, maybe that's a little bit more accurate.
Yeah,
it's like the average. It's like when working out an average wage. Like the top is so far away, it completely skews off the actual average.
It's when you use the mean to work it out. It's where you get that 2.4 children from, and nobody's got 0.4 of a child. They've either got like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. No one's got 0.4 of a child.
Well, maybe some of the royal family. I'm not sure. Now, Tom enjoyed the discussion about club cards. Well, glad you enjoyed the response there. Paul McCord comments, kids get dropped off at school now instead of walking a quarter of a mile. People forget they have legs. Well,
very true.
When I was a lad, we had to walk, that kind of, etc. All right, so we are coming up to 8 minutes to the hour now, comrades. It's actually turned into a long discussion just inspired by one article. And by the way, we have 78 people watching us now, which I think is pretty good stuff. Hello to everybody who's doing so. Now given that we are going to shut it down on the hour mark today, maybe we just jump into a quick and more light-hearted piece. So, Rick, are you ready to call Piers Morgan what he is?
Yeah. I think most people should know this or do know this, but if you don't, Piers Morgan's a cunt. That man has dined out on getting sacked over his own ego for those pictures in the mirror. He wasn't making a big stance. He wasn't. He was essentially saying, I don't need to apologize. I am Piers Morgan. He just stinks of flipping old British colonialism. And the most, just to skip forward to today, the consistent question that he asked, as we all know, can we mention that those group on here?
You mean the Palestinian National Resistance Fighters?
Yeah, the democratically elected Gazan government. Do you support those? And then create a moral monster out of everybody instead of having a menial conversation. And if you try to discuss with him, he shouts over you. So there is no conversation. It's just Piers Morgan saying things dead loud. And it's how the hell he got on TV so much. We know why, because he was doing the job that he was paid for, wasn't he? And he was everywhere, and it's just a cunt, isn't he?
Well, British TV has a lot of competition for that title, though. I mean, if you look at the number of people just on BBC, Sky, GB News, Talk TV, the number of people you could describe as a Catchy Next Tuesday on any of them is astronomical. I mean, you could take your pick. I mean, Andrew Marr being one of them, a particularly smug former member of the Socialist Workers' Party. Let's take Nick Ferrari being another one. I would say Hugh Edwards, but he got sacked for reasons undisclosed due to legal notice. and various others. So anybody want to throw in any more of TV personalities into the Is a Cunt series? Because we started off this series of articles on the website with Terry Christian is a cunt, and I think that's very much proven. But any nominees for that title that anybody wants to throw in? Jason, you first.
I'd like to nominate James O'Brien, please.
Oh, yes.
James O'Brien, the champagne socialist extraordinaire of LBC. A man so arrogant and so stultifyingly pig ignorant. He's got to be an article for the future date, definitely.
Well, he's basically Piers Morgan, but with a beard and with a sort of more faux left-wing opinions.
Yes.
They're the same person.
Yeah.
Chris, any nominees from you?
Well, Steve Rotherham.
You don't bother them.
Yeah, it's going to be so hard for me to write, because as soon as I start trying to write, I just start scribbling on the paper and just writing cunt over and over again, which isn't really going to educate people as to why he is a cunt. Apologies again to people who aren't from the Northwest. Steve Rotherham is kind of like if you've ever seen Gangs of New York, he's just a mere incumbent. He's there because he's there. He does nothing and expects you to do everything he wants. And when you ask him to do anything, he says, "It's not my fault, I can't do it." I will expand on that.
Well, that is British local politics in a nutshell, Chris, isn't it? Which is you get a lot of egotistical morons turning up and saying, I am your local councillor. Well, are you going to do anything about the lack of NHS services locally? No, I can't do anything about that. Are you going to do anything about the cutbacks to local council's budget, which you voted for? Well, I had to vote for it because if we don't do that, then they'll send commissioners in to run the city. Are you going to do anything about, which they did? Are you going to do anything about anything? Well, we can't do that because the central government controls everything. So then what in fuck's name is the point of you? Is the question.
Exactly.
If they're not going to use if somebody is in a local government position and they're not going to use it to basically kick off constantly and fight for their area, then there's no point to them being there. Basically, you might as well have a piece of wood with a smiley face drawn on it. But yeah, look forward to upcoming articles on James O'Brien and Steve Rotherham, two cornerstones of British politics and media. We've got some more nominations coming in now. Jerry says, this is someone coming in from Hampshire, says, that Hartley Brewer bitch.
Yes. Yes.
Mustafa Barghouti suffered both her and Morgan. Paul McCord says James Whale and his sidekick are cunts. In fact, James Whale is a poor man's Alan Bezic. James Whale, I thought he was dead, and then he turns up on Talk TV with like what appears to be some sort of puppet next to him.
Yes. He hosted Steve Headley's remarkable appearance on the show when he was talking about Palestine, and James Whale had him thrown out. Yeah, that was interesting. Catch that on YouTube if you get the chance.
I'm gonna have to look at that.
All right, so this brings us up to 2 minutes to the hour, so I think that's a good place for us to sign off for this evening.
Can I just say one more thing? Sorry, about averages. Do you know everybody listening to this show has got more legs than the average person?
Oh, because the average person has 1.9 legs.
Yeah.
There we go.
We're all very special.
And that is a good note to sign off on. So we have 85 people watching live right now. I think that's the best we've done on the live stream so far. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you to everybody in the chat who's contributed to a very interesting discussion this evening. So I won't go through you all because there's been so many good points made. Keep an eye out for the forthcoming series entitled Is a Cunt. We will be putting it in book form to be sold at various festivals throughout the summer, which you can purchase if you come and see us at Durham or up in Wigan. So it only remains for us to sign off one at a time. So Jason, say farewell to the people, please.
Thanks for everyone for watching, and see you again soon.
Thank you, and ta-ra. Sorry you couldn't see my beautiful face.
Thank you, everyone that turned in for this. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave any comments on the recording, and we will be back the same time next month.
All right. Thanks, everybody, and good night.
Ta-ra.